Where you on?
We can go look.
Alright.
Yo, I only have shockwaves.
I have a burst and stink bombs and a revolver.
Yeah, this guy's an SMG. I don't have anything.
GG.
GG. Hello?
Are you from?
What?
Are you from? WhatsApp. Let's go Campos Fatais. You speak?
Yes, I do speak.
I don't know speak English, okay? I'm from Brazilian. Oh, sorry, bro. Oh, fuck. They're here. Oh, easy. You like Brazilian players? Não, o cara é português, velho. Você é português, né? Onde você é com... Eu vou pegar uma arminha aqui. Como é que tá chegando, galera? Tem mais cara aqui. I have ammunition for shotgun. I want.
What do you want?
Munitions.
I don't have any shotgun ammo.
I don't know. Munition.
What ammo?
Jeez. Oh, fuck.
I don't have any of that ammo.
Você não tem? No or yes? Ok. Oh, there.
What?
Fuck. Take that, bro. Oh, wee. Bye.
Bye. Oh shit.
Holy shit, boy. Nada a ver, mano. Isso é português, você.
Unmasked Peter Parker via the Daily Bugle news outlet and J. Jonah Jameson. This scene is extremely important within the context of the MCU and very remarkable, as never before has Peter Parker Parker been unmasked in films before? I'm just kidding. This is the worst. Peter is so bad at this. Much like the actor playing Spider-Man, Tom Holland, it just seems that Peter Parker cannot keep his secrets. With Peter Parker's secret identity now fully out in the open in the MCU, we thought it would be really fun to take a look at every time Peter Parker had been unmasked in film. And I know YouTube is this weird world where you have to be ultra literal about everything you say in a video, but what I mean by unmasked is, here's basically every time somebody new learns that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And I'm not going to actually cover every time he takes off his mask. That would be a ridiculous video to make. So I hope you enjoy this because it cracked me up preparing all of this content and realizing how horrible Peter actually is at keeping his secrets on film. Now, let's get into the many times Spider-Man has unmasked himself in big screen appearances, and buckle up because it's basically every single film multiple times. In Spider-Man 1, after the murder of Uncle Ben, Peter attempts to track down his assailant. After learning that the man who killed his uncle is the same man he stood idly by and watched rob the wrestling show he had participated in earlier, he decides to, unmask himself for some reason. And you know the story, bada bing, bada boom, a little wrist snap, a little window plunge, and the guy takes Peter's secret to his grave. Next up in Spider-Man 1, while never technically being unmasked, Norman Osborn does eventually deduce the identity of Spider-Man during Thanksgiving dinner. Later on in the film, during their climactic final battle, Peter does take a goblin bomb to the face, where the majority of his mask is blown off. And also in the final battle, we see Peter and Norman both unmasked, fighting to the death. Next up in Spider-Man 2, when Doc Ock robs a bank for money to fund his experiments, Peter arrives to save the day. During the iconic and famous train battle, we see Doc Ock disable the brakes of a train and send it speeding recklessly forward. Senator Mitch McConnell, for some reason, is the train conductor, and the sparks of the broken controls catch Peter's mask on fire. He unmasks himself, but Peter does, of course, save the day, with dozens of New Yorkers learning that Peter's just a regular guy underneath the mask. These New Yorkers are quick to attempt to defend Peter, but they're all pretty much immediately clapped by Ock, no diff. Directly after the train, Ock brings Peter's battered body back to Harry. Harry plans to kill Spider-Man, who he blames for his father's death, but upon unmasking Peter, he steps back, gasps, and struggles to go through with it. This revelation builds on the foundation of Peter and Harry's relationship in Spider-Man 3. Next up is the end of Spider-Man 2, where Peter stalks Doc Ock via the old sneak electrocution attack, but he's unable to shut down his reactor, which has grown far out of control. Peter again unmasks himself to appeal to Otto's morality. Otto champions up the courage to break free of the madness inflicted upon him by his robo-arms, and plunges his creation and himself into the river, dooming them both to death. Also during this scene, Mary Jane unavoidably learns who Peter Parker is as well. Next up, we have the greatest Spider-Man film, Spider-Man 3, where Peter goes through the majority of this film without ever unmasking himself to anybody. Congrats! Which has to be a new world record for Spider-Man films. However, the symbiote helps Eddie Brock determine who Peter actually is, and towards the end of the film, Sandman does pound his mask directly off of him, leaving a partially unmasked Peter to fight both Sandman and Venom. So I guess, two new people found out. Damn it, Peter. Moving into the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, while not technically an unmasking, Peter does reveal to Gwen Stacy that he's Spider-Man on her terrace, mostly because he wants to make out with their boy, but also because he wants to leave their date and face the Lizard on the bridge. Now, speaking of the Lizard Bridge showdown, after Lizard throws a couple cars off the bridge, Spider-Man is left trying to save a child who's panicking and scared and dangling hundreds of feet off the ground. Peter does unmask himself in an effort to show the kid that he's just a regular guy, and he does let the child wear his own very presumably stinky spider mask in order to give the child the courage needed to climb to him so that they could save both of their lives. Now, this is a little known fact, but that kid does grow up to become Captain America. That's true. Google it. Next up in Amazing Spider-Man, the Lizard finds out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man because he leaves his camera in the sewer. Lizard then tracks down and fights Spider-Man at his school, where technically Peter is kind of already unmasked, but he remasks himself, then later unmasks himself again. You suck at this, Peter, you're so bad. Again, in Amazing Spider-Man 1, when the Lizard is on a rampage, Spider-Man is subsequently nearly stopped by Captain Stacy and a number of other officers and arrested. Peter has to unmask himself in order for Captain Stacy to let him go so that he can save Gwen's life. Now, the next time that somebody learns that Peter Parker is Spider-Man isn't until almost the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2. In Amazing Spider-Man 2, Peter manages to keep his identity pretty much under wraps from everybody new throughout the majority of the film, right until the final battle. Harry deduces Spider-Man's identity based off the fact that Peter and Gwen are together, but Peter never technically unmasks during the fight. He does take it off right afterwards, though, when he fails to keep Gwen Stacy's spy in one piece. What? It's a joke. She's fictional, but also very much dead. Moving into the MCU, we have Captain America Civil War, and this is the first time that we see Spider-Man in the MCU. Tony had kind of already deduced who he was via video footage and the fact that the film didn't really feel like spending any time discussing that element. Tony just kind of knows because he saw some clips on YouTube and has this sick technological detective skill that we don't know about, but whatever. Next up, during Spider-Man Homecoming, Peter returns home from patrol, where Ned's just kind of like chilling in his room, building a massive Lego Death Star. Ned, of course, panics, and Spider-Man calms him down, and they actually go on to form a very interesting relationship, with Ned becoming his guy in the chair in a very Oracle-like role. Later on in Homecoming, Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, is able to deduce Spider-Man's identity during the car ride to Peter and Toomes' daughter Liz's homecoming dance. Spider-Man is never really unmasked here, but Toomes does know who Spider-Man is, and he uses that information in an attempt to sway all of Spider-Man's future actions. Also keep in mind Toomes goes to jail knowing that information and keeps it secret for himself. And in one of the funniest scenes in the MCU, during the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, Peter arrives home, takes off his spider suit, but fails to close his bedroom door, revealing his identity to Aunt May, proving once again that Peter Parker is horrible at having a secret identity. Peter's next scene in Infinity War, where after arriving on Ebony Maw's ship headed towards Titan, Peter unmasks himself to Doctor Strange, leading to some pretty funny banter where Peter doesn't quite understand that Stephen Strange is using his real name. It's also where Spider-Man is formally dubbed an Avenger. Later on in Infinity War, Peter unmasks himself during the conversation/fight with the Guardians of the Galaxy, who are also hunting for Thanos, and he really doesn't have any need to in this scene. He just does it. He literally cannot help himself. The man needs professional help. Alright, so this next one is kind of gonna be every single time Spider-Man unmasks himself for literally no reason at all during Avengers Endgame, and I'm gonna be calling it the Spider-Man Endgame Unmasking Lightning Round. So let's start. After Captain Marvel destroys the Sanctuary 2, Thanos' spaceship that's raining down crazy fire on the Avengers, Peter unmasks himself and introduces himself to Captain Marvel. He's like, "What up, girl? I'm Peter Parker, how you doing?" But every other female in the MCU shows up directly after this, and they all also immediately find out, but, face it, they probably don't care at all. However, after Tony gives the ultimate sacrifice to save the entire universe from Thanos, he's given a hero's funeral. And at this funeral, everybody is there and out of their costumes. Presumably, every Avenger who didn't already know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man learns his secret that day. And this is also where Nick Fury learns who Spider-Man is. Or is it Talos? Sorry. At this point, he isn't really concerned at all with the secret identity. I'm surprised he isn't just wearing a t-shirt that says, "Hi, I'm actually Spider-Man, here's my home address and a list of all my fears." And now we've got into Far From Home, where Peter unmasks himself to dozens of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and Quentin Beck at the behest of Nick Fury, aka Talos, in Venice. And we really can't blame Peter for this one, because apparently Nick Fury already told everybody in S.H.I.E.L.D. his secret identity, which is not cool, Nick. It's not cool. But to be fair, if Nick didn't tell anybody, surely Peter would have just done it himself, because he always has to tell everyone. Later on in Far From Home, Peter and MJ determine that Mysterio is a fake and that all of their friends are in danger. So he immediately reveals his identity to MJ, who had kind of pretty much already confirmed it on her own, but even if she didn't, he probably would have just told her there anyway. And last, but certainly not least, basically the entire world knows, the entire MCU world at least, that Spider-Man is actually Peter Parker at the end of Far From Home after Mysterio unmasks him on television. So that brings us to right now. It's kind of crazy to think that there are over 20 examples of Spider-Man unmasking or revealing his identity to people on film, and it's even wilder to think how shocking it still is whenever it happens. We're so programmed to believe that the secret identity is this sacred thing that nobody should know, but as characters like Spider-Man consistently prove, it's just not that guarded of a secret. Maybe having Peter's identity out in the MCU is a really good thing because we can stop wasting precious viewer hours pretending that nobody's gonna know or find out. Regardless though, I do think it'll be pretty cool for the MCU to have a new status quo where everybody in the world knows that Peter Parker is actually Spider-Man. It reminds me of Marvel Comics after the Civil War II issue where Peter Parker comes out on live television and tells everybody that he's actually Spider-Man, which is really cool, but eventually was retconned. So maybe something like that will happen in the MCU. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. Thank you guys for watching this video, and if there's anything I missed, which is entirely possible, please feel free to let me know down in the comment section, as well as what your thoughts are about Peter Parker constantly unmasking himself.
Why the Sinister Six already exist in the MCU. Many things are set to change in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. With these changes come new villains. However, they're already here and ready to make their debut. Want to find out how the Sinister Six already exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Keep watching to find out. Everything up to this point. In the comics, Spider-Man has always had a significant rogues gallery. Between his ability to make villains angry and stop their plans, it's not surprising that would be the case. Plus, Spider-Man gets around. He's been a solo hero. He's teamed up with other Spider-based heroes, worked with and been a part of the Avengers. He's even worked with the X-Men and my favorite, the Fantastic Four. All of those team-ups lend themselves to providing even more villains who want to see Spider-Man put down for good. Of all the villains who have faced Spider-Man, none has ever challenged Spider-Man as much as an entire group of villains. Who are we referring to? None other than the Sinister Six. Up until recently, Marvel fans haven't gotten to see any real team-ups of that nature happen in Spider-Man movies. We got a clunky team-up in Spider-Man 3, but by no means did it do justice to the concept of a villainous team. But now, Marvel fans can rejoice that the Sinister Six are coming. Even better, they're already here and ready to make Spider-Man's life miserable. It's true that this group has not been officially confirmed by the bigwigs at Marvel Studios, but we don't make our claims lightly. That's why we're going to address who the 6 members of the cinematic Sinister Six are and exactly why that is the case. Vulture and Scorpion. Now let's start with the first two who are sure to be shoo-ins for joining this infamous group. Vulture and Scorpion made their cinematic appearance in Spider-Man's Homecoming to a great reception by viewers.